Hey, welcome back to the Spring to Life podcast. I'm Caitlin. I'm your host. I'm also your holistic hormone health coach, fertility awareness educator, and Pilates instructor. And I created the Spring to Life method in order to encourage other women to embrace their natural cycles, to live cyclically, to balance their hormones naturally, and live vibrantly. And this podcast is dedicated to helping you do just that. And I'm really excited because today I am joined by one of my favorite guests that I've ever had on the podcast. This is her second appearance. I have Lily Fanok with me today. She is an energy healer, and I'm going to let her introduce herself because I don't even know how to put into words exactly what she does.
Well, thank you, Caitlin. I'm excited to be back on the show. Yes. So a little bit about me before I guess we dive in. I am, like you said, an energy healer, but I also do a lot of work with the body and with the planet. So I work really closely with the earth in a lot of different ways, in a physical way, in an energetic way, and in a kind of body focused way that I am leaning more and more into every single day. So that's something that I always touch on with clients, that I always help to facilitate with my clients, is a greater connection to the planet, to earth, to nature, as a form of healing, number one, but also as an avenue for embodied uh, self-discovery, really coming back to the self on multiple levels. In terms of energy work, yes, I am an energy healer. Energy worker is something that I'm kind of leaning to in terms of title, but I do Reiki as the form of energy that I work with. And I also use a frequency called the Tree of Life frequency, which is really connected to the spirit of the earth, but also to animals. So one of my offerings right now is animal Reiki healings, and really just facilitating the connection between the parent or human and the animal. So facilitating greater connections between you and your animal and the animal that you love is what I really like to help with and really bring to the surface. So I do a lot of different things, and they're all kind of interwoven together. So I think that pretty much covers it. Am I missing anything?
I don't think so. I mean, I think
Okay.
that all sounds really magical and amazing. And the animal Reiki work sounds so interesting. I'm going to have to put a pin in that to ask you more later. That sounds really cool. And if you want to know more about like Lily's journey to becoming what she is now, her first guest appearance on this podcast goes really in depth into her whole story of healing from chronic illness and how she became more connected with earth and earth energy, I guess you would
Yeah.
say. And I just think she's such a wealth of knowledge for anybody that is struggling, like I said, with like chronic illness or burnout or anything like that. And like somebody that's looking to become more connected to
Mhm.
themselves. I think she's such a
Definitely.
great facilitator. And I was walking my dogs before we got on here, and I was thinking about how this is actually the third time that we're recording. And I'm really excited to be recording today. I was so excited when we recorded, I think back in like December, and we had a great conversation. And I was going through some technical difficulties, just like a lot of frustration in my business. And I ran into some storage issues, and somehow our recording got lost before I could edit it. And I actually, like, I thought I had it. I was like, oh, I'm just going to go in Zoom and like download the recording from Zoom, but I hadn't recorded it to the cloud. So, although it was a really unfortunate event, it set off this trigger of me like really figuring out systems that work better. So, we're in a much better place. And we're also like, this is going to be an exciting announcement. Wait till the end to hear about something we have to share with you. But one of the topics of our conversation back from December that I think is still really fitting right now is that there's a lot of chaos happening all around the world. There is tragedy, there is just really horrendous things happening that can be really impactful on our own personal energy, depending on how empathic you kind of identify as. I think we can be affected at different levels. And I'm curious how you have been kind of navigating these energies There's a lot going on politically in the world and in our country, I think nationally, locally. So kind of how do you navigate that? What's going on with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a couple things that are coming to mind. Number one, oh, I just wanted to touch on the, losing of the storage stuff. And yeah, that was just so unfortunate, but also, yeah, like such a catalyst for both of us to like continue reconnecting. So I just wanted to say, like, I'm also happy in that way. But okay, so getting into this question. Yeah, I really like to limit my exposure to things that are out of my control in a sense. And I guess maybe that could seem a little bit calloused in some ways, but we really, as human beings, I believe that we really aren't meant to know everything that's going on in the world. I just don't think that we have the capacity to be able to mentally, emotionally, physically, energetically process all of it. And that's not coming from a place of not caring versus taking responsibility for what I know my reserves can handle, what I am able to physically process. Because what I think can be really detrimental to the collective and to individuals is when we all become stuck in this place of repressed emotional experiences, trapped nervous system reactions, so that we all kind of become disconnected from our bodies, from our truth. And so, and when I say from our truth, what I really mean is from our internal compass, from what we know for ourselves, what our joy is anchored in. There can be sometimes a pulling away from that when we're too inundated by things that are quote unquote out of our control. However, I'm not suggesting that we become, solely focused on our own selves and only staying in our lane and not caring about anything else that's happening in the world. That's not really where I'm going with this. I'm coming at it from a somatic perspective of really taking responsibility and for ourselves in these kinds of chaotic situations on earth, on in the world, is really about understanding our capacities and operating within those frameworks from a responsible place. And I don't know why, but the word responsible just keeps coming up because there
Mhm.
is this level of like self-responsibility that we have to be able to maintain energetic boundaries for
Mhm.
ourselves and to not allow ourselves or feed into like, addictive kind of tendencies to go kind of further past and like do that self-abandonment kind of pattern of just absorbing and not being able to transmute any of it. Because from an energetic perspective, one thing we can really offer the collective is the ability to transmute things, to like feel the depth of things and move through it, to feel like the pain and the sorrow that another is feeling, and in that full feeling allow it to pass through our bodies. And that is really helping the collective. It's really anchoring in this kind of like new way of being where we're not just kind of walking around like zombies, like fully, completely inundated by everyone else's fields without any kind of self regulation that can even take place because we're so emotionally, energetically overwhelmed. So I try to set those parameters for myself. And the more I get to know myself, the more I know what I'm able to handle, process that isn't my own. And a lot of times it's not much. Like a lot of times it is
Yeah.
not much. And I think there's something that we need to understand too as people who are attuned energetically or even just self-aware. There is a lot that we can do just from being in our own energy. There is a lot that we are always doing unconsciously just by feeding into our own joy
Mm.
and taking care of ourselves. Like there is a lot that spreads from that. And I think a great example is social media. Like when you see Caitlin taking care of herself on her stories, does that inspire you to do the same? Yes, it does. That's the point of social media, is to spread awareness of that, and it works,
Mhm.
And so even when we're not seeing it, there's still like this energetic of, oh, she feels really resourced. Maybe I should resource myself in in new or more in-depth ways. You know, there's an energetic feeling of that. And the more resourced we become individually, the more I believe it expands to the collective.
Hmm. Wow. That was, I think, probably like a lot to absorb, but in like such a good, nourishing way, like something that maybe people needed to hear. And the thing that was coming to mind as you were speaking is that we've not had this inundation. We haven't had this unlimited access to information until the past 20 years, like the past 2 decades, really. Because I was thinking back, I think I was in fourth grade. I somehow became part of this club that met in the library. And each week we brought like one news clipping of an interesting story to share with the group. One news clipping, that's it. So maybe you're hearing like 10 stories and they're like really random things, and you're not just totally weighed down by so much negativity, and it's not to say all of those were like horrific war stories, it could be an invention or like something good that happened. And I think how you were saying, like, it's not to be callous, but you have to have boundaries with yourself. And I wonder how much, being so bogged down by that type of energy affects like, kind of reactionary tendencies and like creating more friction between people. I think we see it a lot on social media in the way people just like go at each other in the comments, you know?
Mm.
So it's like, are you creating a healthy environment for relationships in your real life, or are you just, fostering more turmoil? And I think, that also made me think of like my story of overcoming burnout. Like when I was at my lowest, I continued that news consumption from fourth grade and became like an NPR addict. And that was what I listened to from the time I got up until, I went to bed, unless I was like going out to teach a lesson or something. And a lot of that is negative news. It's like the bad news that you're getting all day. And I felt very just I was outside of myself during that time. So when I cut back on all that consumption, it made it a lot easier to come back into myself. And like you said, start taking care of myself and realizing how much better I felt and being able to share that with other people. So I've been trying to be even more mindful of how much I'm like scrolling. I'm like, is this just a dopamine hit? I don't care about any of this that I'm looking at.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a great point. And the reason that I pull this back around to you're helping by taking care of yourself is because the people I believe who tend to hook into news a lot of the time and hook into a lot of that stuff are very caring people. And
Mm,
I find that when I have this conversation with kind of like that personality type, that energetic in terms of people, there can be like a pushback of like, well, I just can't not care. I just, I can't turn a blind eye. Like these people, there's
mm,
this pushback around that. And so that's why I bring it back to the way that you can help is staying within your own empowerment and being fully resourced in your life. Because as Caitlin was saying, when we aren't at our best, we have a ripple effect on the people around us. And that's something I've been considering for myself too. Like, man, when I am overwhelmed, when I'm burnt out in like in a space of that nature, I snap easily, and that's not great to receive on the, receiving end of it. And that's just on a small scale, but thinking about it from if you zoom out, when everyone's burnt out, when everyone's inundated, when everyone has those leaky energetic boundaries, when everyone is overexposing and overextending themselves energetically in ways that they might not even cognitively understand or be aware of. Everyone's able to understand it's not like a complex thing, but it's just like sometimes we don't see it because it's harder to see ourselves sometimes. And
mhm,
so that's why I bring it around to the way to help is through that avenue. And of course, some people, might be directly tied to those industries and they're like really working on the ground to make differences in different areas. So that's a different situation. But I'm kind of talking to the average consumer person who is pretty removed from these situations that actually don't have anything directly influencing them.
mhm. Yeah. I wonder, do you have any like personal boundaries around social media or like rules around how you use it? I mean, I know it's a part of your, it's a tool for your business. It's a part of how you run your business. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I do. My relationship, I feel like with social media is definitely evolving, and it's hard to say. I don't actually have any guidelines that I follow every day, other than the fact that I do not wake up and look at it. Like, I do
Hmm.
not wake up and look at my phone. Sometimes I don't look at my phone till 10 or even later sometimes. Sometimes I'll look at my phone earlier if I have something pressing, but I definitely give myself that morning space. I try to get out. Well, I do get out every single morning into nature in some way. And usually that comes before my phone.
Hmm.
And I clean out my Instagram quite a lot. I wouldn't say like every week or anything like that, but I do like to clean it out. I do like to unfollow a lot of people that I just haven't interacted with in a long time, or just not feeling it from them, or simply like I'm not interested in their content. It doesn't have to mean anything about them, but I tend to do that every once in a while. And then I also, on the receiving end, really like the practice of kind of weeding out the people who follow me. So if there are weird like bots or whatever, like in my followers, like I tend to get rid of them if
Hmm.
I'm aware of them, and just try to keep it as clean as I can. I do think that the less I consume, generally speaking, the better I feel, the happier I am.
Hmm.
There are people that I have my core group of people that I learn from, and and I also really enjoy finding new people that I do resonate with, but I do like to kind of keep a close rein on that. I like to be like, okay, is this a full yes for
Hmm.
this content, for this person, for this experience, activity, whatever, then great. And if not, then I just kind of let it go. So those are kind
Hmm.
of my major things around social media that I try to uphold on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
I like that. I feel like I love doing like a closet clean out. I want to do a follower clean out and following clean out. I feel like that would be a good thing to do like quarterly. I'm trying to put more like quarterly milestones into my business, and I feel like that's a good thing. And also, I love that you remove followers too, because as you were saying that, I was like, man, that like pulls down your number, which like just from an outside perspective, or like if you're tied to that number, can feel like, oh, I'm like it's going down, I'm losing. But then you know that your followers are genuinely invested in what you're sharing.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's like the mind. It's like, wait, what? What am I doing? But at the
Hmm.
same time, yeah, I feel so much better with having a tight-knit audience. And I know that the people who are there really want to see me succeed and want the best for me, as well as want to receive from me in all the ways that I can offer. And so, yeah, that's actually something that I learned from a business coach that I was working with intermittently here and there, just kind of consuming some of her messaging. And I was like, that is a brilliant idea. So can't say I came up with that one by myself, but I'm definitely implementing it. And yeah, I'm glad it kind of like sparked something for you too.
Yeah, that's a good one to continue passing along. Hopefully,
Mhm.
somebody listening also gives it a try. And I think that kind of leads me into my next question because previously, like in the past few years of your business, most of your work has been done online. Am I correct in saying
Yes.
that?
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, most of your energy healing was done virtually. You held, do a lot of IG lives and things like that. And you announced in the last couple months that you are pivoting away from that. You are pivoting into in-person services. So I'm curious what really sparked that for you and what that pivot has been like.
Yeah. Thanks for opening this up because yeah, I started my business when it was COVID times, the COVID times. Hopefully, sorry, I hope this doesn't make you like, I don't know. I don't know what happens when you say that word these days. I don't know. Anyway, I started my business when most of the world was online. And
Mhm.
so that was just natural. It was also something that made a lot of sense because I didn't really have the I was still in very much a healing journey. So I needed to be more internal facing. And I also didn't really feel, yeah, like it just many different circumstances just didn't feel right for me to be doing my business in a like one-to-one um in-person setting. And so I kind of just ran from with that structure for my business of keeping most things online, of doing Zoom for my one-to-one clients and also Zoom for my energy healing. And I really, or I'm sorry, my energy healing circles. So I did small groups online as well. And I really enjoyed it, to be honest. I really loved it. I loved the freedom of it. I loved being able to have a session with someone who I didn't have to be in the area. It just seemed to open so many doors, as technology really has. I mean, it's changed everything. But around, yeah, like December of this last December of 2023, I started to feel just really burnout from Zoom. I just couldn't, for some reason, doing a lot of online sessions in the way that I was doing them, which for the listeners, basically I was just offering one-off sessions. So you could book with me whenever you pleased. And there was pretty much like an open booking system for my business. That combined with the online just really was not working for me anymore. Like everything in me was a hard no to that.
Mhm.
And so I just had to let it go. And so I closed down my bookings and just kind of softly announced that like I wasn't going to be taking any more one-to-one clients online and that I was moving towards more in-person work. And as I started to pursue more in-person work, I was like, yes, okay, this is right. Like there is so much, I think, to being in person with someone. And it also gave me a window into kind of more that was wrong that I didn't really understand previous to like when I first kind of cut things off. And that was the fact that the one-to-one uh random bookings with me just wasn't aligned for me anymore. And I was really desiring more in-depth, longer form containers with clients. And that's what I will be bringing in this
Mhm.
coming season. Uh,
Mhm.
so basically, that was kind of like it was a two-pronged situation. I think I was burnt out from Zoom. I think a lot of people were burnt out from it. And then also just craving more in-depth space and openness with clients to really have like time to go deep, time to transform, time to initiate changes. There was just this desire for more depth there. So
Mhm.
that's kind of why I pivoted and what I've kind of learned about that pivot since doing it.
I love that. And thank you for being so honest about it. Cause I think a lot of us are feeling that. And as you're talking about that, I was like, man, that is really similar to what I have been feeling about my business. Like, yes, a lot of it is always going to stay online, but there are some aspects of it that it's like, do people really want to be getting on Zoom, after they've been at work all day, or if they work from home, they've been on Zoom all day, do they really want to get back on Zoom for their workout, or they just want to like press play and, do it on their own time? It's like having that freedom of time and not being beholden, and also craving that in-person aspect. We got to connect last month actually in person, and there's just something magical about being able to work in the space with somebody else's with their energy and like really be able to, for me, get hands-on. For you, I think probably just to be like even closer in their energy. Actually, I'm so curious about that. How is energy healing different in person from virtually for you on like the practitioner side?
Yeah, it's so different. And I am still exploring this because I've only done it a handful of times, but it's so different. And something that was coming to mind when you were speaking was just when you're in person, there's like a new level of vulnerability with that human, especially
Mm-hmm.
in a space like that you work in where you're physically working your body. But also with me in the energy healing space, there is so much more vulnerability to it because you're just there with that person and you can feel potentially what they're going through if they're sharing, or if you can just sense that. And there's no closed doors. And so I think that
Hmm.
that is it's a little bit of an initiation for me, to be honest, but it's also, I think, allowing me to step more fully into my authenticity and
Hmm.
just really seeing people for how they show up and showing up as me too. And there's no like holding anything. Like there's no like holding a dynamic or like holding some sort of way of being. When you're together, it's so much more difficult to pretend anything. And not to say
Hmm.
that I felt like I was in a pretending energy previous, because that isn't necessarily the case at all, but I do sense more of a vulnerability aspect between for myself, but also for the client.
Hmm.
And I think that that can bring a lot to the table, and it can foster deeper connections, I think. In terms of how the energy healing works, it is the same. So basically, the energy healing, it's very similar to when you do it in person, except there is in the Reiki system, there's a symbol that allows you to kind of go over time and space. In person, you don't necessarily have to do that because you can put your hands right on them. And I
Hmm.
am really experimenting with touch. I tend to be like, I won't touch you. Don't worry. Don't worry. But like, I'm kind of like, let me touch you. Like I want to try. I want to try
Hmm.
that. And not maybe not everyone is comfortable with that. And I totally get that. But I think that it's another potential that can happen in person. And when you were adjusting me and stuff, with my flow with like the Pilates on the equipment and stuff, it was so helpful. And I
Hmm.
really enjoyed that like personal touch of like you helping me to like adjust my form in certain ways. And it just felt very held and yeah, very safe. And also I got so much out of that in an embodied way. So
Hmm.
that's kind of how I feel about the in-person stuff.
Yeah, I have similar feelings. Obviously, we're doing like very different things, but when I first got online, because I had been teaching in person prior to the shutdown and like everything going virtual, and it was a bit of an like a rude awakening for me because I had taught some classes online, like to the clients from the studio that I worked at. And I taught it like this. I was sitting down, watching everybody, telling them what to do because they all had their video on and I could see them and I could give them corrections and I could help them. And when, I started to shift my business online and started hosting some classes, people would show up, but they wouldn't turn their video on because they just want to like watch and follow along. And to me, it's not the same experience. And I think that's maybe why I kind of have an aversion to the live classes with my membership too. I feel like that's just like kind of this sticking point in my business where I'm like, I feel like this is something that I should be offering because other people do it, but I'm not doing it the way that I would want to be doing it for people to get the most out of it. So that's something that I've been kind of like tossing around in my head. Like, how do I make this feel the best? Like feel most in flow. So I think there is just something about being in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different potential benefits depending on what you're looking for. Like with your Pilates, there's the opportunity to get hands-on adjustment. With me, there's an opportunity to feel really held and seen in kind of an
Hmm.
unfiltered way. And also
Hmm.
to get to know your practitioner, your coach, whoever, in a more personal way. I think that that just kind of naturally happens when you're in person because there's
Hmm.
just more that you can see, mannerisms, there's just more that you pick up. I mean, in Zoom, we just see the front of each other's faces.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I would imagine with energy work, the one person I used to get massage therapy from somebody that also did Reiki, and she's the best massage therapist that I've ever been to. And we also had a personal relationship. And I think that when you have, not to say that you have to be like best friends with somebody, but when you have that depth and understanding, like when I have a client that I've worked with over and over and I know what their body needs and I can still support them and challenge them to like their personal needs, there's something to be said for that relationship.
Definitely, definitely, because it's more of a felt connection, a more embodied connection. I have the same thing with
Hmm.
my naturopath. She does a lot of spinal work on me, and so she's starting to know my body. And it's funny, my boyfriend has gone to her twice now, and he came back from his appointment and he was like, I literally feel like she knows me so well. I've only had like 2 sessions with her, but she like knows my body because she's able to see, what I'm reacting to, slash what I'm responding to, slash my weak points. And he even mentioned that to her. He was like, it's a very rare thing to like have two in-depth sessions with someone and really feel like this person knows you. But I think
Hmm.
that is the power of doing the hands-on work.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. Oh, I love that. It's like when you find somebody you click with, like it's just so good.
Mm.
So I want to ask you about, you just have a lot of new things going on, a lot of new and exciting things. So you launched a podcast. Tell us about your podcast.
Yes. So in the beginning, when I was introducing myself, I'm like, as soon as I said, did I forget anything? I was like, that's what I forgot. And it's
Oh my
funny
gosh,
because
yes.
that's the focus of my work right now is my podcast. And I am so excited about it. We launched the podcast about 5 to 6 weeks ago now. So we have 5 episodes that are live. They're ready for you to listen to if you choose. But yeah, we are just so excited. My co-host Jess, she is incredible. We work so well together. And we met through Instagram, which is funny. We met through Instagram and then we met in person, and we have just been creating this offering for all of you. The focus of the podcast is on spirituality, but its focuses on a lot of different topics. It's really about empowered spirituality. And we're talking right now about the 13 sign true sky system. So if you're curious about astrology, tune in to the show. This is a very, I would say, little known system that Jess introduced me to, and we're now introducing to our listeners on the podcast. We also are going to be talking about human design in upcoming weeks, but really from this lens of our experiences. So, not so much about the information associated with these systems, but really about how we experience them in our life and how they've shown up for us, how they have helped us in different ways, what we resonate with, what we don't. And again, we'll be kind of extending that approach to various topics within the spiritual kind of umbrella. So, our podcast is called The Sisterhood of the Rose, and we have a kind of an introduction episode all about the name, so you can learn about that there.
It's definitely worth a listen. Subscribe to her show, follow her show. If you're not subscribed to my show, also follow my show. So you get those new episodes every week. It's so great. And honestly, the astrology, not to take this on a huge tangent, but I was so interested in the 13 sign astrology, and I started messaging. I don't know if you saw in the Instagram DMs, but I was messaging with Jess because in my like in traditional astrology, I guess you call it, I'm a Leo sun and rising and a Scorpio moon. And to an extent, I don't want to go too much into this. I kind of like Leo, yes, resonate with, but I'm very reserved, like quiet person. I've always been a performer, but not like always putting myself in center stage. So my signs are changing. I'm still a Leo sun, but my other signs are changing. I'm going to get a reading with her this week, actually. So I'm going to have her as a guest. We're going to be talking about astrology sometime in April. But like the integration of it, like your experiences of it, I think that is such a useful way to learn about spirituality, because I think sometimes if you're getting a lot of information, if you're new to it and it's just like all this information and you just like throw yourself into like all of these things that you think you should be doing, and then you're like, well, I don't like feel any different, or I don't like, it's not working for me, or like whatever, or like you dive head first into it, and like totally becomes your personality, like whatever the thing is. I think you're giving such a nuanced perspective of like, this is how you can use this thing as a tool, and how it can make your life a little bit better, make you understand yourself a little bit better. I've really been enjoying all of your conversations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we are really big on the experience piece, and that's a really core thread for us, and something that I think we both speak really well to, because we have had just a lot of, I mean, as most have, just a lot of different experiences within the realm of spirituality. And we're both so interested in the realm of spirituality. It's so core for both of us. And so, yeah, we really want to offer that kind of nuance with the show of not
Mhm.
really speaking to maybe the details as much as more so to our journeys and how that can be applied to your life.
Mm, yeah, it's a good one.
Thank you
So
so much.
many. Yeah, of course. And I'm curious. So we've been talking about your journey as like a solopreneur. So what was it like going into something like this? Like I know you've done collaborations. We've done collaborations in the past, but they're kind of like one-off things for the most part. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
this is like a whole endeavor. Like you're committed to a podcast with another person who you met online, right? So
Mm.
what has the experience of creating something in partnership been like?
Wow. It's been so rewarding. And there's so many ways I could go with this, because it's been, for me, I won't speak for Jess, but for me, it's been definitely, it's brought up so much in me. And I mean, Jess and I are co-hosts, we are business partners, but we are also friends. And that's
Mhm.
how really how we started, I guess. We met and kind of hit it off. And but yeah, our podcast came along really early in us knowing each other relatively. So I wouldn't say that we weren't long-term friends before launching the podcast, but we have a personal connection that I think really comes through the episodes, which I love about
Mhm.
that. And yeah, it has brought up so much in me, as all relationships do, because you're right. The relationship that Jess and I have is probably the closest thing to the relationship that I have with my partner, like my boyfriend. And,
Mhm.
that's a romantic connection. My boyfriend and I, obviously, me and Jess, it's not that way, but there is this level of commitment and devotion within it that I think
Mhm.
strikes a similar chord to, a romantic relationship, because this is something that we both are really saying yes to on many different levels. So I
Mhm.
think, yeah, you hit on something so important there, just the level of, yeah, commitment, and like, what does it mean to say yes to that
Mhm.
for, the foreseeable future with another human being? And it takes a
Mhm.
lot of trust, also getting to know each other, knowing how each other works. We're going to talk about this on the podcast, but and we kind of already touched on it, but we have different designs. We're not the same person. So there's going to
Mhm.
be learnings of how to work together. And thankfully, gratefully, I'm so grateful to have her as a partner, because she's so heart-centered, so aware, and so willing to move through things with me. And I really think that
Mhm.
it takes, for me, going into a partnership like that was not something that was really on my radar, to be honest. Like, I never really thought about doing a collaborative experience to that degree, right? Like, I,
Mhm.
I do little collaborations all the time. But when Jess approached me about it, and I don't know, I was like, yeah, like, this is the person that I want to do this
Mhm.
with. And it has been so great for both of us. I mean, we have visited each other at our homes, and that has been so fun to like get to know each other face to face. And there's much more of that to come. So I'm so excited about it, and so grateful for the experience already. And it's only the beginning.
Wow. That's so cool. And I think from my perspective, I find it inspiring in a way because, and I don't think this is like just blatantly true, like across the board, but in solo entrepreneurship, I think that there is like a little bit of safety and maybe a little bit of pride to an extent. And when you're in a partnership, when you're doing something with one or more people, there's more accountability there. And there I think there's less of a, this is something that I've been thinking about also. And we kind of talked about this when we met last month, where you can kind of like rest on your laurels a little bit if you're by yourself, or it can be like, maybe like you said, you have different designs. Your strengths are maybe not everything you need to create a business. I think maybe there's like a little bit of like a propeller that you get when you're doing something in partnership that can kind of like move things forward in a different way. And like you can use those strengths, different strengths to your advantage to create something really cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's such a big point because yeah, you know, we operate kind of at, we operate so well together. And yet, of course, I think timing is something that, you know, is really important to get clear on in a
Mm-hmm.
partnership because I mean when we were launching our podcast there was a lot of prep work, there was a lot of planning, like it was launching a podcast, and I kept saying this to Jess, I'm like, launching a podcast is not like launching a business because launching a podcast is basically launching a finished product. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
something that you just like start an Instagram page and you're like, I'll see where this goes. It's like
Mm-hmm.
no, you have to have an idea, you have to have the cover art, you have to know what you want to do generally. Like there's always like space for things to morph, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
there is this kind of a lot on the back end to like prepare. And I think that's where me and Jess were like really getting to work together. It was like in the preparatory phase. And you're right. I think I've literally said this before, but I was like, I don't even know if I could do this alone. Like I don't know. I don't know if I could launch a podcast and release an episode every single week by myself. Like it feels like so far-fetched to me.
Sorry, everyone. That's me.
But like I totally
It's
get
hard.
it. It's hard. It like, you know, and it's like Jess, like having Jess, like it's motivating, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's motivating for
Mm-hmm.
me. And so it's not like I'm like an unmotivated person either. Like I am a motivated person, but I think that yeah, I mean exactly what you said. Like there is an opportunity when you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur to be like, maybe I won't launch this.
Mm-hmm.
That's not happening when you're, you know, in a partnership and you've, you know, decided to do something. Obviously, Jess and I have really open communication. And so if something doesn't feel right to one of us, like we are able to communicate about that and adjust if need be, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, there is commitment and I love it. Like I love it. Like I love that. And yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like it would, I honestly, like my heart is just like, I can't even think about the potential of doing something alone like this. Like it is only right with us, like with the two of us. And so that's, you know, it's crazy how things how things
It's
work
like
out.
synergistic. I think like, I don't know if it was like your second episode, but like talk about synchronicities. Like you just have to, I think you're a perfect example of somebody that leads with their intuition in business. And you talk about that a lot on your Instagram and how to like kind of tune into that and
Mm,
feel for that yes and no kind of
mm,
response.
yeah. 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 It's like it doesn't work without her. And so that's been a really amazing experience and something that I realized I've wanted for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were doing it together, launching it, I'm like, this actually feels like a dream come true. Like, wait, what? And it's just interesting, yeah, like you said, like how the universe delivers that. I feel really lucky.
That's so cool. Well, I'm really excited to see where the episodes go, what topics you'll touch on next. I always love hearing about human design, so I'll definitely be tuning in for that one.
Yes, okay, good. I'm really
Yay.
excited for your reading as well.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to it. It kind of feels like when I learned about human design and I learned that I was a projector, like it changed my whole perception of myself in a really good way, in like a softening kind of way of like, oh, that's why I'm like that. Like it's
Mm.
okay for me to be like that. And I think that when she first told me, and I actually can't remember what my signs are in the 13 sign astrology. I think it might be the Libra. If that's what comes after Leo, or is it Virgo?
No,
I
I
can't
think you're a
remember.
Cancer.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. I think you're right.
Cancer
Um,
somewhere in your chart. I'm not sure where it
yeah.
is, though.
So I'm like, oh, I don't even really know anything about these signs because in my traditional astrology, I have many of the same placements. Like it's a lot of Leo and Scorpio, and
Mm.
there's really not that much there. So it's just been like, oh, I'm like prideful and moody. So now I'm like, oh, like this makes so much more sense because I do feel like, there are these other sides of me. So TBD, everybody, I'll be talking about it with Jess on the show in a couple weeks, hopefully.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. I think that's going to be really exciting for your audience.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm so excited to introduce this as like a tool to enhance your life. I think it's the same thing as like leaning into your cycle and like embracing those highs and lows. Like it's just another tool that you can use.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of cycles, we have moon cycles, and something that Lily and I have done in the past is these new moon rituals where we're kind of just doing as much self-care as we can in one event, because the moon kind of offers us this time for reflection. I know we're coming up on a full moon as we record this, but we are going to be doing some new moon ritual events. And I kind of want to explain why. So Lily, maybe you can talk about what the new moon means to you and like how we can use that as another tool in our self-care.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, as Caitlin shares on many different platforms, when we think of the cycles, women's cycles, they can often correlate with the moon cycles. It's kind of like a marker in some ways for us to kind of lean into different energies. And learning this from Caitlin, learning it in other places as well, I've definitely seen a correlation for myself in terms of where I am in my cycle and the moon placements too. And I think for the new moons, what really comes to mind for me, this is often a time when I am I'm kind of usually close to my bleed around that
Mhm.
time. And so, although, like, I think the new moon traditionally is a lot about like starting new things and setting intention, it's often for me, if my cycle falls on that phase of the moon, it's often for me a time of like a darker time, like the
Mhm.
new moon is dark and it's kind of like an inward focused time. And so I tend to I tend to really embrace that when I'm on my cycle. I tend to really allow myself to move through that. And it's like all my senses are like heightened when I'm on my period. So
Mm.
if that is coming on a new moon, like I definitely lean into that and just rest really. So that's kind of where I've been in my cycle does shift over time. So it's not always that way for me, but it has been around that time for the last couple of months. And so that's kind of what the new moon has been for me in recent past.
Yeah, I feel similarly. And in, like historically, kind of like woo-woo type things, the new moon does correlate traditionally with the bleed. So it's like, yes, it is technically the beginning of the cycle, excuse me, but it's also like this shedding time. And also, they also say, like, for women, the veil is a little bit thinner, like our senses are heightened and like your intuition may feel stronger. It is like a good time for reflection. So I've always kind of felt that like the same way, where if you were to like Google what should you do on the new moon, it's like set intentions and, you know, new beginnings type of thing. But I also feel like it's more, I want to reflect back on the past month. And it could be you're either on your bleed or it actually is the new moon, or maybe both, like for you, are happening together. And I'm similar, where my cycle will kind of like shift and sometimes it lines up and sometimes it doesn't. But it's just a really good time to just like give yourself a little extra love, to reflect back on your past cycle, on things that went well and things that didn't go well, on how you want to change things. And I think that's where like maybe the new beginnings can come in, where you think, okay, these things maybe didn't work. This is how I want to shift moving into this next cycle. So I think it's so nourishing for us to come together. And I was wanting to ask you about this collaboration right around the time that you announced you're moving away from virtual services. And I was like, no, she might not want to do it.
It's funny.
But I asked, and you're so gracious to agree to do
Yes.
this. So bi-monthly, we're going to be hosting these new moon rituals. which will be free for members of my membership, but we're also opening it up to the public if you want to purchase a ticket. And what it will be, the first one is going to be on the 8th. We have a new moon coming up in April, at the beginning of April. So I will lead you through just really like luscious body connection, stretch, kind of relax you, get you into your body, like bring your mind back into your body, because we kind of tend to, especially with all the stimulation, like live outside of ourselves a little bit. So bringing it back home. And then Lily is going to do her magic.
Yes. Yeah. So we're going to be doing on my end some meditation, and I haven't talked to Caitlin about this, so we'll kind of touch base on this before it's a go, but potentially energy work. It just kind of depends, but definitely come prepared for a meditation and just really be ready to kind of dive into your own process. And then we can also kind of conclude with some prompts that I can give you after the meditation.
Yes. I mean, energy healing sounds amazing, but honestly, Lily's guided meditations feel like energy healing, like in and of themselves. Like she has some of the best meditations. I love it. So it's going to be just a really nourishing experience. I can't even remember what day of the week the 8th falls on. I think this one is maybe on the weekend. Is that a Sunday?
Yes. Or I'm sorry, it's a Monday.
Oh, a Monday. So it'll be a Monday evening, a nice way to start off your week. And I hopefully will have the link. If you're not a member, you can buy a ticket. I'll get the link in the show notes. And I'm really excited. So this is going to be happening bi-monthly. I think it's going to be a great way to connect, even if it is on Zoom. It's a really intentional space. Videos on, please.
Yes.
We all want to be present. But I'm excited about that. I'm really grateful that Lily was open to this collaboration.
Yes. Yeah, I'm so grateful that you reached out to me. I love being involved with you. And yeah, as we've discussed earlier, I'm not offering one-to-one sessions. So if you are a client of mine that would like to receive from me, this is a really great way to do that, as this is it's accessible to everyone, even those who are not in the membership. So if you're listening and I actually have had kind of 2 people reach out in the last 2 or 3 days about energy work. So, and just like, the work in general that I do. So this would be a great way to connect, not just with me, but with Caitlin, and getting into your body as well. So I just highly, highly encourage it for anyone who is looking for that TLC, that personal touch. And yeah, I'll see you there. Can't wait.
Yes, I know. I'm so excited. So yeah, check the show notes for that. This has been such a fun conversation. I always love connecting with you. I think the audience is going to have so many different tidbits to take away, different things to explore. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to share with the audience?
I don't think so. I'm grateful to be a guest here, and I love this conversation. It felt really easy and flowy to me, and I'm glad that I got to share some of the things that are new in my world. So thank you for offering those questions.
Absolutely. And I'll link Lily's Instagram. That's the best way to connect with her. So I'll link that if you want to give her a follow. She just shares quality. That's the word. Quality content is what Lily shares. So she is a quality follow, a keeper in the follower count, you might say. So thank you so much for sharing your time with me, Lily. I'm so excited to release this episode, and I'm sure I'll have you again in the future.
Thank you again, Caitlin.
You're welcome. Well, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you really enjoyed this podcast. If you did, please share it with somebody that you think could benefit from it. Make sure you're following the show, and I'll talk to you next week.